So we all know AI models can talk, right? They've pretty much mastered conversation. But how do they actually do things? How do they go from just chatting with us to actually booking a flight, or managing a database, or even coding an entire website from scratch? That's what we're going to get into, because we are right on the edge of giving AI hands.
And this quote from Andreessen Horowitz, it just hits the nail on the head. It perfectly frames the problem we're facing. APIs, those application programming interfaces that basically run the internet, were built for a different world. They were built for predictable software where a human clicks a button and gets a specific expected result. They just weren't designed for the messy, creative, and, let's be honest, sometimes unpredictable way that AI agents think.
Right. That is the billion-dollar question, isn't it? How do we build that universal language? A new standard that lets any AI agent from any company securely and efficiently plug into and use any digital tool out there.
So here's our game plan for this explainer. We're going to start by digging into this API gap. Then we'll look at the vision for a universal language for AI. We'll see how new protocols and architectures are actually making this happen. Check out a really clever way to package skills for agents. And then we'll look to the future.
Okay, first up, let's get right into why the current system is kind of broken. What exactly is this API gap that's holding these incredibly powerful AI agents back? Now take a look at this diagram. What's really important here is that loop you see right in the middle. That's basically the agent's thought process. It gets some input from a user, it does some reasoning, makes a plan, and then it starts cycling. It figures out what tasks it needs to do, it accesses tools like APIs, it uses its memory. This whole cycle of think, act, learn is what makes agents so powerful. But man, it puts a ton of strain on systems that were never, ever built for it. And here are the 4 biggest reasons why traditional APIs just can't keep up. First, they're not flexible. They expect data, or payloads, in a really specific format. If an agent wants to do something slightly different, nope, can't handle it. Second, scalability. That constant back and forth an agent does creates these huge, unpredictable spikes in traffic that can totally overwhelm the server. Then there's security. Our current security models weren't built for autonomous programs roaming the web. And maybe the biggest one, the documentation is written for humans. It can be ambiguous, which causes agents to hallucinate and make some pretty serious mistakes.
So, if the old language doesn't work, well, we need a new one. And that brings us to the vision for a totally new universal standard. The big idea here is to create a whole new layer for the internet. A standardized interface that lets any AI agent plug into any tool, any data source, or any service. Just like you can plug any appliance into a universal wall socket. It just works. So, how do we actually build this universal language? Well, this isn't just a dream. Developers are out there right now, building the actual protocols to make it a reality. Let's take a look at how they work.
One of the leading contenders here is something called the Model Context Protocol, or MCP. The easiest way to think about it is as a set of rules. It's a rulebook for how an application, like say your code editor, can tell an AI model about all the tools it has available and exactly how to use them.
And for all you developers watching, MCP actually took its inspiration from the Language Server Protocol. That's the magic that powers stuff like autocomplete in your IDE. But here's the key difference. LSP is reactive. It just responds to what you're typing. MCP, on the other hand, is built for autonomous agents that decide for themselves which tools to use and in what order to get a job done.
And this is where you can really see the power of a standard like this. With MCP, your code editor isn't just for writing code anymore. By connecting to a bunch of different MCP servers, it can become a central hub to do almost anything. Send emails, generate images, build a website. It completely breaks down the walls between different apps.
But a protocol isn't enough on its own. We have to rethink the entire architecture of our systems to be agent-aware right from the very beginning.
Okay, I know, this diagram looks a little intimidating, but don't worry, we're going to walk right through it. What you're looking at is basically a blueprint for a modern enterprise system that's designed to be agent-aware. It shows how a request from an agent, way over on the left, flows through all these different layers of security and data processing to finally interact with services on the right. Let's break that flow down, step by step. So here's how it works. First, an AI agent sends out a request. That request immediately hits an API gateway. Think of it like a bouncer at a club. It checks the agent's ID and makes sure it doesn't try to overload the system. Next, something called middleware adds crucial context, stuff like who the user is. Then, this really cool technology called GraphQL Federation acts like a hyper-efficient personal shopper, going out and grabbing only the specific data the agent needs from a bunch of different backend services. And finally, that complete, context-rich response is sent back to the agent. It's a really smart, secure pipeline that's built from the ground up for AI. So we've got the protocol, the rules of the road, and we've got the architecture. But how do you actually package a capability so an agent can pick it up and use it? Well, let's look at this idea of skills.
Agent skills, this is a concept from Claude, are like these little plug-and-play modules of expertise. Each skill is its own self-contained package. It's got instructions, it's got metadata, it might even have some code scripts, and it gives a generalist AI a brand new, specialized ability.
Now here's the really brilliant part. To keep from overwhelming the AI's limited context window, which you can think of as its short-term memory, skills use this clever trick called progressive disclosure. The AI always knows a skill exists from a tiny bit of metadata, which is super cheap token-wise. It's only when the agent actually decides to use that skill that it loads the more detailed instructions. And get this, if the skill needs to run a script, the code itself never even enters the context window. Only the final result does. It is incredibly efficient.
And what's wild is that teaching an agent a new skill all starts with a simple text file. This file acts like a little instruction manual. It tells the agent the skill's name, what it does, and crucially, when it should think about using it. That simple file becomes the bridge between human knowledge and what an agent can actually do. Whew! We have covered a lot of ground, but honestly, this is just the beginning. Let's wrap up by looking ahead at some of the major hurdles that are still out there.
Yeah, there are still some really big challenges to solve. How do we host these tools so thousands of users or even thousands of agents can access them at the same time? How do we create a universal login for agents? How can an agent look at millions of possible tools and discover the one best tool for a specific job? And maybe the most important one, how do we watch and govern what these autonomous agents are doing out in the world?
So, when you put this all together, what you're really seeing is a fundamental shift in how we think about software. We're moving away from this old world of static APIs and manual integrations and into a new world of dynamic, intent-based tools that agents can find and use all on their own, guided by machine-readable instructions. We're going from an API-centric world to a use-case-centric one. And all of this leaves us with one last fascinating question to think about. If this whole ecosystem succeeds, do we see a universal app store, a marketplace, not for humans, but for AI agents to go shopping for new skills and tools? The implications of that are just massive, and it's a future that's being built as we speak.